Hello, 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 and welcome back to Rausch Games, everybody. It is pretty late on Wednesday night. It's actually very early Thursday morning if you're being technical about it. And this is actually a video I had initially put together on Monday afternoon as sort of a live commentary from home to introduce you to my fourth series. It is indeed WWE 13 Universe Mode, and this is the one game that has gotten me into the idea of creating a YouTube channel. This is the one that really kind of made me realize it's something that I could do. So this is going to be my kind of primer video to introduce why I'm going for WWE 13, and beyond the why, also the how. The how mine will be different from yours. It's a very technical universe mode, and I operate under a very strict set of rules. So in another video at another time, we'll get into why I'm actually a wrestling fan and how that makes me the hugest nerd in the world. But for the meantime, I'm on a time budget here because I don't know when this video is going to change screens, and I'm commenting over something I taped days ago because, you know, the audio recording corrupted. Yay! So anyway, there it is. We switched over. I'm showing you, we have Raw. We have our Raw roster there. We have, I'm sorry, our Raw card. And I'm going to show you how we got to that point. So my universe has 5 brands. We're going to get to that screen sometime in the next few seconds, minutes, hours, something. We have 5 individual shows, I should say, not 5 brands. 3 brands, 4 brands. 4 brands, 5 shows, and 6 shows. Sorry, Jesus, man, I am tired, guys. I'm sorry. I just got in from work. You know the drill. We have 4 brands spread across 6 shows, Monday through Saturday, every week in this universe mode. And we have Sunday pay-per-views once a month because you can't change that with the game. So, where a lot of people that I've seen on YouTube choose to set their brands up as competing brands, where you'll have, you know, WWE Raw, you'll have TNA Impact, and then you'll have like ECW or Ring of Honor or CZW or NJPW or something weird, you know. I don't want to do that. This universe mode takes place entirely in a world in which Vince McMahon and his WWE product have taken over the American professional wrestling landscape completely. All competition is down. There may be some indies left over, but for the most part, anything that could compete with the WWE has fallen off and failed. Here we go. Here's the screen that shows you all the 5 brands. So for this, all of these shows, they are all within the WWE universe. Instead of doing, you know, different competing shows, they all work together, and they're set up in kind of a major and minor league standpoint, like professional sports. Like, I love baseball games because you control a roster of upwards of 80 guys across 4 or 5 different teams, and you've got to manage them. You've got to call people up and send people down, and that's going to be a huge component here that we're going to get to. But first off, you see, we've got our Raw Monday night, NXT Tuesday, AWA on Wednesday, Superstars on Thursday, SmackDown on Friday, and Heat on Saturday. So Superstars is the shared minor show of Raw and SmackDown, and Heat is the shared minor show of NXT and AWA. And now to talk about the way that I have this leveled out, your Raw and SmackDown are the top 2 levels. They are on the same level, and they're a 60-man combined roster. Have to split them up, you know. The second mid-tier of developmental is going to be your NXT roster, and they have their own show on Tuesday night. And the final tier at the very bottom, which is just basically a step above being an independent wrestler, that is with AWA. It's a promotion that I just opened, and it's pretty much populated entirely by created wrestlers right now. Some of them are real, some of them are fake that I've created. So you get a few here and there. I got Brock Sampson from the Venture Brothers wrestling in my leagues. So all of these are property of the WWE, and the point of this universe mode is not for the shows to compete against each other, but for the wrestlers on each show to constantly move toward being promoted to the next level above them. And that's a dynamic we'll get into in just a minute. I honestly forget what I was talking about here, showing you the week, but as you can see, oh, that's the other big thing. The big rule behind my universe mode, I have simulated 3 years from the start of the game, because playing at the beginning was very boring. I had Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk constantly, and you're going to see I'm going to go through the rosters here. I'm not going to be able to keep up with actually naming people, so you're just going to have to look on the screen and see who I have there for yourself. You'll get to see them as the shows come up. But my big dynamic is that I simulated 3 years with this game, only ever playing matches for my own created wrestler, the Rausch, because I'm a goddamn egomaniac and I love myself. He's on SmackDown, by the way. So I would play all of his matches, and everything else was simulated. And after 3 years, I stopped after the second full WrestleMania, and I began actually playing every match of every show, and putting together these storylines that had been occurring, and it really led me to an interesting point. It wasn't Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk all the time. It wasn't the same stupid crap between the Road Warriors and Kofi and R-Truth. You know, the stories had really become different, and I helped myself by creating these minor rosters and giving myself goals for them. When we get into the championships later, I'll kind of show you a little bit more about how that dynamic works. But essentially the goal of everybody on these two rosters is to make their way up to either Raw or SmackDown on top of the world. The NXT guys are shooting for it. The AWA guys are shooting to get promoted to NXT. And while there are ways for people to get promoted, there are also ways for people to get demoted. And that's how we kind of keep our rosters different. You can see I have the Rausch and Zack Ryder and Justin Gabriel here on SmackDown. They were all promoted from NXT for doing the right things. And people that you'll see on my NXT roster coming up here, Mark Henry and Billy Gunn and Damian Sandow, they were demoted because they were, at the time that someone else came up to the roster, they had the lowest cumulative momentum rating on the roster, and they were sent down. And it keeps things competitive. To be perfectly honest, Billy Gunn hasn't done much in this universe mode. Like, the New Age Outlaws split up almost immediately because he got sent down to NXT in like the first wave of call-ups, I think. And he hasn't done much in NXT. His momentum is low. When he's in a match, he loses. He's probably going to end up getting demoted to AWA, which is going to be crazy. Like, I haven't had somebody go 2 levels one way or the other yet. Granted, AWA is a new promotion for me. You know, we'll see. We'll see how things go. And we're just going to take a look at the AWA roster. I'm going to name a few people here just so you can see who some of these created guys are. I'm not sure how well this video is going to turn out. Or maybe I'm not even going to look at it. I don't know. Again, I have no idea what I was doing. I was explaining something here, and I feel like I was being a little bit long-winded about why I chose to do a wrestling game. Because I friggin' love wrestling, and I haven't played a wrestling game since SmackDown Just Bring It. It's been forever. I was a huge fan of wrestling back when I was 13 years old, preteen, Attitude Era, Mankind was my homeboy, and when Mick Foley got fired from the company as part of the storyline, I was completely turned off to wrestling. I went through high school, I went through college, ignored it, and I just got into it about a year ago again because of my girlfriend and our group of friends. Long story there, probably fodder for a Minecraft story time sometime in the future. But here is our AWA roster. You see Brock Sampson there. He is a title holder right now. And I've got your run-of-the-mill guys that you create for WWE that weren't included in the game. I have a lot of Chikara guys. I am going to Anniversario Never Compromise this Sunday, June 2nd, because it's in my home city of Philadelphia, and I am excited. None of you will know what I'm talking about, but god damn it, Gavin Loudspeaker is going to get his head shaved by Tim Donst, and I can't wait to see it live. I love the guy, but I just want to see him bald. We'll talk more about Chikara later. If you don't know about it, message me. I'll show you some cool stuff. But it's my favorite wrestling promotion in the world. But I have our Dudley Boys, and you see Biggie Langston, the Boogeyman, Doink the Clown, El Generico. I've got Los Ice Creams, Dean Ambrose, The Shield is all part of this. All of the major created wrestlers that you download. You know, I got Brad Maddox. I kind of wanted to get Curtis Axel, but I'm out of room, and I don't want to delete anybody, so we'll have to see whether or not I choose to do that. I don't know. Do I really want Michael McGillicuddy? I mean, he's Joe Hennig, but come on. I just gave the guy 3 names in 1 sentence. That's why wrestling's awesome. So, I'm taking my time going through these rosters. I'm waiting for us to get to the title screen so I can show you exactly how people are promoted and demoted. Hopefully, I can sync up the audio pretty well. We will have to see one way or the other. That's for dang sure. I have no idea what I was talking about here on this screen. I should mention that aside from the 4 rosters you've seen, I have a separate roster called Bristol, and it's just basically the people that make up the management team of my universe. Vince McMahon, GM of Raw. Those are our tag teams right there. We've got more. Yeah, just take a quick look at that. I'm not going to go too far into it. There are more beyond the primetime players at the bottom, and they are like the Colony from Chikara, the Shield, you've got the Dudley Boys, you've got, who else is down there? It's a lot of people that I got for AWA, so nothing too crazy. Hunico and Camacho. So now we're going to the titles. Alright, now, Vince McMahon is the general manager of Raw and still the chairman of WWE in general. Shane McMahon is the general manager of SmackDown, Stephanie McMahon the general manager of NXT, and Stone Cold Steve Austin is the general manager of AWA. He was an active competitor, but he had been out of matches for quite a while, and I decided that was a good move when I began the AWA roster. So we also have Eric Bischoff, Paul Heyman, John Laurinaitis, Mike Tyson hanging around. We've got other potential management candidates that might come up if I choose to get into stories later. But that leads me to my next little quip about this universe. It is not story-driven. It is not my story mode. It is my universe mode. And I really want to show you how letting universe mode go randomly can actually help us. I think this is where I'm just going through some of the storylines we've had on each roster. Honestly, I'll get into that in my commentary in the matches. Some of the bigger ones I can get into towards the end of this video too, because I'm pretty sure I'm just going to have to run a freeze frame, so maybe I'll just do a little catch-up across the board for you. But, wow. Completely forget what I was talking about before I confused myself there. Oh, it's not a story-driven universe mode. I have not done stories for it yet. I will in the future, but they will be few and far between. Alright, now here we are on the title screen. This is what I want to talk about here. So, the way that promotion and demotion works in my universe mode, I'm going to go back up to the major title, hopefully. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to start with NXT here and the title holders. Every single belt here in the developmental roster grants its user promotion at one point or another across the course of a calendar year. I'm just showing you what the latest champions have been. This is great. Alright, well then, while this is going on, try not to get too confused. I'm going to talk about the NXT roster. So, the NXT champion right now is Jimmy Uso. His belt is a guaranteed promotion to either Raw or SmackDown in relation to WrestleMania, the pay-per-view of the SmackDown and Raw rosters. And what that means is, the holder of his belt, the NXT championship, as soon as WrestleMania ends every year, we're talking like 11:59 p.m., the night of WrestleMania, the person that holds the NXT championship is automatically promoted to either Raw or SmackDown. Once a year, it happens. So you want to hold that belt. The way it's determined whether it goes to Raw or SmackDown is pretty simple. It's just a matter of which roster currently... I'm sorry, I just ate a bunch of M&Ms. I'm burping. It's just a matter of which roster currently has fewer members. So right now, they both have 29 members. Let's say hypothetically that Raw has 28. He would automatically go to Raw. Now, to see if people get demoted, I am keeping my rosters at a maximum size of 30 per. 30 people per roster. That is as high as they go. Right now, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT are all 29 for me. AWA is 34. AWA is the only exception to the 30-person rule. I can have as many people as I want down there, as many people as the game will let me, because I want it to feel like if you start to suck, you kind of get lost in the indies and don't get called up. It kind of makes sense. But anyway, so we'll say that Raw has 30 wrestlers and SmackDown has 31 wrestlers through some fluke. Somebody else just got called up. I got a little crazy. I wasn't paying attention, whatever. So Jimmy Uso is going to get called up to Raw after WrestleMania because they technically have fewer. But then Raw has 31 wrestlers and one person has to be let go to bring us down to our maximum of 30. The way I determine that, it's the one person on the Raw brand who has the absolute lowest momentum at that time. So we'll say that at that time, Kofi Kingston has been losing constantly. His momentum is lowest. No questions asked, no chance at redemption. Kofi Kingston gets demoted to NXT. Jimmy Uso takes his place on the Raw roster. Now, if there is a tie for number of people, if they both have 30, Raw and SmackDown, to determine where Jimmy goes, I am going to find the person across both main rosters that has the lowest momentum, and I am going to subtract him from his roster and add Jimmy to that. So we'll say, even though Kofi's got pretty low morale or momentum at one point or another, you look over at SmackDown and poor old Antonio Cesaro is not getting any matches. He's on the bottom of the world. He's at the bottom of the card. Cesaro gets knocked down to NXT. Jimmy Uso takes his place. This is a guaranteed roster spot as long as you hold it after WrestleMania. Who just came up like this? I forget who the NXT champion was. I want to say it was Justin Gabriel the last time I went through all this, and this whole promotion system has been kind of a work in progress. So there are things like the tag team belts and the women's championships, which I'll be telling you the stipulations for the first time today, because I've never even used them before. So I'm kind of coming up with a few of these on the fly, but the major and minor belts have always been the same. Now moving on to the Internet Championship, same rule, but it's more of like a gambler's belt, where the person that holds the belt has 4 chances every year to move up, those 4 chances being the 4 major WWE pay-per-views, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble. The difference here, though, is that it's not a guaranteed ticket. The holder of this belt gets to go to the pay-per-view in question, whichever one it is, one of the major four, and wrestle in a match against a random 90-rated superstar from either of the two brands of the level he's moving up to, Raw, SmackDown here, in a random stipulation match. For example, Gangrel was very recently the Internet Champion. He lost the belt to the Godfather last weekend in this Universe mode. He went to SummerSlam this past year as the Internet Champion and took on The Undertaker, who was returning after like an 8-month hiatus in a submission match, and The Undertaker kicked the living crap out of him. If the Internet Champion wins in his match against a WWE superstar, the Internet Champion automatically becomes a member of the roster of that superstar, and the same caveat applies. If that roster is forced over 30 people because of this, then somebody must be demoted to NXT. That should always take place. Now, the big thing here, whereas with the NXT Championship, the major belt here, when its user moves up, since it's guaranteed, there's no question about it, the belt is forfeited, and that NXT Championship is given to his current number one contender. With the Internet Championship, if he wins his match against the 90-rated superstar, then the belt is forfeited. He's no longer the Internet Champion because he's earned his promotion, and it goes to his number one contender. If he loses, let's say the Godfather was to take on Stone Cold at Royal Rumble and Stone Cold kicks the crap out of him, then the Godfather returns to NXT and is still the Internet Champion, so that if he can retain that belt for another 2 or 3 months, he could theoretically go to the next major seasonal pay-per-view and try to challenge again. This is what makes it kind of the gambler's belt, where the major championship provides you a definite promotion once a year. This provides you a possible promotion 4 times a year, and that promotion is based entirely on your in-ring skill. It's not guaranteed, but it gives you more chances over 365 days. So, those are the big differences between those two. The same rules apply with demotion for the Internet Championship and all that. You know, if there aren't 30 people on the roster, nobody needs to get demoted. And in a second here, we're going to move down to the tag team titles and then the women's championships after that. These are both very similar to the major title, except the pay-per-view is different. But the tag team title here, that is relative to SummerSlam. And the same thing, the guy on NXT, this is a guaranteed call-up for the tag team that owns these two belts. They will take up 2 roster spots when they're called up. And I've thought about a couple ways to do this before, but I think the one I'm about to say is just the best way, and it makes it more fair and kind of more random when it comes to demotions. But after SummerSlam every year, and I haven't done this yet, this next year coming up will be the first time, the NXT Tag Champions forfeit their belt. They move up to whichever roster has the fewest members. So we're going to say in this scenario, Raw has 29 and SmackDown has 30. So they move up to Raw. Now that gives Raw 31 members. Somebody has to get discarded. Somebody has to get demoted to NXT. Again, it's the person with the absolute lowest momentum. Now we'll say that SmackDown has 31 and Raw has 30. They're going to go to Raw. They're going to get 32 members on Raw. And now 2 people have to be demoted. I was originally thinking, well, take the person with the lowest momentum, and if they're signed to a legal tag team, then that tag team gets forced down. But I thought, nah, that's kind of dumb, because if tag teams are forced to break up because they move down to NXT, like half the team does and half the team doesn't, I think that's actually pretty realistic. And then the person that's left in WWE has to, find a new partner. I think it's pretty cool, and it's going to mix things up a lot. So it's just going to be the 2 people in that scenario that have the lowest momentum, regardless of tag affiliation, regardless of what it means for teams breaking up. So we'll see how that plays out. But they are related to SummerSlam, and the tag team champions are another guaranteed ticket 1 time a year. And hopefully in about 2 seconds, I'm going to show you the Divas belt as well. If not, it's going to get really awkward while I drink some water here. And it is hot in Philadelphia, guys. Oof, it's only going to get worse. And my air conditioning just broke in my apartment. I don't think I have the heart to tell my landlord. That's going to be an expensive fix. Alright, apparently I was really enjoying talking about the tag team titles here. It's kind of funny, the Usos are double champion. There we go, JB's a double champion. And the women's title is the same rule. This applies to Survivor Series every year. After Survivor Series, whoever is the NXT Women's Champion automatically promoted to either Raw or SmackDown, whichever has the fewer total superstars. And if either of those rosters is forced over 30 because of that move, then the lowest momentum ranked diva will be demoted to NXT, not a male superstar. We do have to keep our status quo with males and females. Okay, so that finishes off our NXT titles there. You kind of see how people get promoted and demoted. Now I'm going to show you AWA in a second, and the same rules apply, except the people on AWA are moving up to NXT. And instead of looking at the WWE pay-per-views for their reference, they're going to be looking at Saturday Night Heat the day before a pay-per-view for their point of reference. So what that means is, I haven't told you this yet, but the day before a pay-per-view, that Saturday Night Heat, which is, as I mentioned, the shared minor show of the AWA and NXT rosters, you're going to have essentially a minor pay-per-view for the minor leagues. So here, we're looking at the AWA World Champion, Brock Sampson, just beat Kevin Steen the day before Night of Champions 2 nights ago in Universe mode. It is the same thing as the NXT Championship, just one rung lower. So he has a guaranteed belt, a guaranteed one-way ticket to NXT after WrestleMania each year. The Heartland Championship focuses on the same mechanic as the Internet Championship, only it moves him up to NXT. So the way that Tyson Kidd would have it, if we walked into Royal Rumble tomorrow, if we were at Royal Rumble weekend, that night on Saturday Night Heat, the night before the pay-per-view, he would challenge an NXT roster member in a random stipulation match. If he wins, he goes up to the roster. If not, he stays on AWA and remains your Heartland Champion. Same thing, just one rung lower, and his match would be at the Saturday Night Heat pre-pay-per-view show, as opposed to at the actual main roster pay-per-view itself between Raw and SmackDown, because nobody gets to jump up 2 roster spots. That doesn't happen. I don't care how much you like Tyson Kidd. And yo, he kicked the crap out of Seth Rollins for that belt. I'm just going to put it out there. Rollins defended it a couple times, but whew, day before Night of Champions, Tyson Kidd stole that belt. Hell in a Cell, brutal. And I'm taking my time explaining this. I apologize for slow screens. I know there are going to be fast changeovers later that I'm not going to be ready for. This is nothing more awkward than adding commentary to something where you have to guess when the screen's going to change. Oh man, this is awful. So yeah, now I'm going to skip ahead here with my commentary. The tag and Divas Championships work exactly the same way. The weekends in question for the tag team, you've got the weekend of SummerSlam. For the Diva, you've got the weekend of Survivor Series, is what I just said. Still the same thing, guaranteed one-way tickets to NXT. If there are too many roster members on NXT, then somebody gets sent down to AWA, and that's how people are promoted and demoted. See, we've got the Dudley Boys as our tag team champions in AWA, the Hawkeye champions, and Caitlyn is our Divas champion. I don't know if any of you are also subscribers to Next Level Games 360. He's the guy that did me that awesome friggin', subscribe to this guy video a while back that I loved. He is a big Universe Mode guy, and he just started doing a minor show on his channel that he let me commentate the first episode for. It is awesome. I'm going to link to it in the description of this video. I had so much fun doing it, and I can't wait to get into my own Universe Mode now to just have fun calling wrestling matches. If you guys are going to see it, I'm a huge geek. I'll always talk about wrestling with anybody in the comments if anybody wants to. All about it. So we are moving right along here. What stinks is there are going to be parts of this video that are just like blank on the same screen because people were coming home and making noise. This may be one of them right now. I don't know. I think there was a time where I walked away for like 20 minutes. This Raw video is 59 minutes long, and I know I wasn't talking that long the other day. Like, my dad came home and the dog started barking and my sister started complaining and people were making noise and stairs were creaking and people were tripping over wires. It was rough. So to this point in the video anyway, while we're stuck staring at Tyson Kidd's Creator Wrestler goodness, I've laid out the brands I have, the way that the matches, the way that the shows operate. You've seen the schedule. I pretty much keep the same pay-per-view schedule, but I've replaced a few, and I'm going to keep doing that. You look down here, we've got Money in the Bank and Royal Rumble. Chris Jericho has won Money in the Bank twice, and The Miz won it the first time. My Royal Rumble winners have been Tensai and Ken Shamrock, and neither has won their title shot. Every one of my Money in the Bank winners has won their title shot. Chris Jericho still has his second contract, though. That should be mentioned. So for some reason, we're looking at NXT again. I think I'm just showing you the contenders. I think this is the part in the video where I went over where my current stories are. I think we're going to get to that towards the end of this particular commentary, but I did want to go over a few more rules for the universe. So as I mentioned, we just saw the schedule. We've seen the way I work pay-per-views. We have seen each roster, and we've learned about my key dynamic
the promotion demotion. That is huge for this universe mode. Beyond that, there are some other pretty specific things that I want to do that are going to keep my universe mode separate from other people's. As I mentioned earlier on, I don't do stories. This isn't story mode. It's not something I'm going to upload to community creations. I am playing the matches the computer gives me. Now, there are people I will focus in on. The Rausch, my created superstar on SmackDown, is one of them. CM Punk and Bret Hart on Raw have an awesome story that I really want to try to embellish if I can. And Damian Sandow on NXT has had some interesting things happening to him, and I want to do that. So I think with those guys, I'll consider making small story snippets, like per episode of whatever show they're on, Raw, NXT, SmackDown, what the hell ever. I'll consider that, but it's not something I've done before, so, I'm not sure how it's going to go. Beyond that, though, I'm not making stories for everybody. If the game wants to keep giving me random stupid matches, I'm going to play them. And that's the other part about Universe Mode. I'm not going to be the guy that films 3 matches and calls it a show. I am going to show you guys every match that happens, even on the minor shows. It's going to be a lot of work on my part. Each video is probably going to be about an hour long. You're probably not going to watch all of them, and I've come to terms with that because this, unlike the other stuff on my channel that I'm having fun with, knowing that you guys are having fun watching it, this is a passion project for me. As I mentioned, this is the game that made me realize I wanted to come to YouTube because I had a really unique idea for Universe Mode that no one else was doing. Other people that I've seen on YouTube, other gamers that play WWE 13 Universe Mode, their focus is to create their own thing to take control of the universe. My focus is to show you, the viewers who may or may not have this game already, how leaving everything random and chaotic can still provide a good experience. One of the biggest problems with this game, aside from the bugs everywhere, my god, the bugs, was the fact that Universe Mode is so repetitive with the cutscenes it gives people and the stories it throws at you. It's the reason I simulated 3 years to let people form their own alliances. The computer made CM Punk and Bret Hart a tag team. It made both Beth Phoenix and Eve date Kofi Kingston and R-Truth at the same time, driving their tag team into dismay. It really did a lot of cool things for story. And when I started playing, again, 3 years later, everything was just that much more dynamic. Certain people had essentially taken over shows and rosters. So, that's one of my biggest things is making sure that you see everything and that I leave it completely random. I don't change matches around, with one key exception. I change the matches for the entire show of Saturday Night Heat, the night before a pay-per-view. The reason being, the way that Universe Mode works when you let it go by itself, it's only ever going to give you championship matches at an official, there we go, wow, I can't think of the word official, at an official Sunday pay-per-view every year. That is the only time you're going to get guaranteed championship matches out of it. Aside from that, you don't really have much, and I really want the NXT and AWA rosters to have lots of title defenses to keep those lottery tickets essentially kind of moving, shuffling the hands, whatever. So, the only times I change matches, the Saturday Night Heat immediately before a pay-per-view, I turn that into the minor league pay-per-view show. So AWA and NXT get their own pay-per-view out of it, and I do make pretty much every match on that card a championship match, whether it's, whether AWA or NXT gets 3, it depends on how compelling their storylines were that month. The other time, also in AWA or NXT, not Raw or SmackDown, since they have their pay-per-views, whenever the number one contender of a championship faces off against that champion in NXT or AWA, no matter what the show is, I don't care if it's major, minor, Saturday Night Heat pay-per-view, I turn that into a title match, whatever the stipulation. So you could have, we'll say in NXT right now, Jimmy Uso is the champion and Damian Sandow is his number one contender. Drew McIntyre is his number one contender. The two of them are scheduled for an Extreme Rules match, one random NXT episode, like a grudge match since Jimmy Uso stole the title from him last week. I turn that match into a championship match, and then it becomes an Extreme Rules championship match, and it makes it really, really interesting. Now, the same rules apply for multiple-person matches. If Jimmy Uso and Drew McIntyre are in a fatal four-way match with both Vader and the Great Khali, that becomes a title match, because technically a champion and his number one contender are in the same matchup. It really still doesn't happen all that much with the Internet Championship or the NXT Championship, but that happens all the time with the women's titles. They always have their champion and number one contender facing off in non-title matches, and you get a lot of those. Caitlyn's already defended her title like 3 times, and AWA's only been a thing for about a month now. Yeah, so I have to change those matches manually just to make sure that you get some title defenses and keep those kind of instant win lottery tickets shuffling hands. Now, at this point in the video, I have gone over the rules, I've gone over the tag teams, you've seen who the champions are across the board. Now, I just want to briefly run down some of the key stories. A lot of things I'm going to go over in the actual episodes as commentary, because like I said, these are going to be like an hour long. I'm going to have plenty of time to talk about story, but I'm going to try to do it in the character of an announcer and not just a general, Rausch Games narrator. So sometimes they might come off as kind of rushed, and they might make you feel like you're not actually in the know. So I just want to let you know what a few things are. Now, the biggest story I'm working with revolves around the fact that CM Punk is the champion and Bret Hart is his number one contender. Because sometime during my 3-year simulation, the computer made the two of them a tag team. And in my head, I was creating a story for it already, saying that Punk was tired of not being the champion anymore, that Brock Lesnar had essentially taken over Raw. He had been dominant for most of the simulation I was doing. So Punk asked Bret Hart to kind of mentor him, because Hart had been, a very dominant champion in his heyday. And Hart gladly took him on because he appreciates Punk's style, his attitude. So they became a tag team, and they actually did really well in tag competition. They beat DX a couple times, they've beaten the Road Warriors, they've beaten Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara. They've never held the tag team titles, but they've never been the number one contender either, because they both have very successful singles careers, so they don't get that many tag team matches. But it was really interesting to come out of the simulation and see that. So when I came out of the simulation, I stopped after WrestleMania. Now, before WrestleMania this year, year 3, which is technically 2014 for those of you playing at home, I'm actually going to start this story with CM Punk and Bret Hart at Extreme Rules earlier this year. It was technically year 2, because the year starts with WrestleMania. So the very end of year 2, the Elimination Chamber, I think I said that. That pay-per-view, Brock Lesnar was in the main event for the evening, an Elimination Chamber match to defend his WWE title. And he won. He defended the belt. But Chris Jericho was Mr. Money in the Bank, and he had held his briefcase for months. He cashed in, and he won the title from Lesnar, beating him, because Lesnar was pretty weakened after that. So Jericho becomes the WWE champion. He holds it for a month. It's a good month. At WWE, at WrestleMania, he is entered into a triple threat match in the main event against Lesnar and Rikishi, of all people, for the WWE championship. Friggin' Rikishi wins. Chris Jericho is not featured in programming for about 5 months afterwards. So I play it up as, it's an injury storyline. He wasn't actually injured, because you can see that, but it doesn't happen all that much, so I just wrote it off that way. So Rikishi becomes the WWE champion. His reign lasts exactly 1 month, and the pay-per-view after WrestleMania, I think in this game it's Over the Limit. I forget the way they have it set up. Bret Hart beats him in a regular one-fall match. So the whole time that Bret Hart and Rikishi were feuding leading up to that, CM Punk and Kane were feuding, and they were both near the top of the WWE Championship standings. So Bret Hart becomes WWE Champion, even though it's everything CM Punk wants in the world. Bret Hart goes on to defend the title against Lord Tensai in a tables match at the next pay-per-view, which I think was Extreme Rules. I may have gotten the two of those mixed up. But either way, he defends it, he remains champion, and now Kane and Bret Hart have a non-title match the next night on Raw. At the end of the match, it's getting toward the end of the match when CM Punk runs down the ramp and attacks both of them. So this whole big back and forth story comes out where Punk attacks Bret Hart attacks Punk. They're both still a tag team, so they're both still getting matches, and it was just crazy. It never made any sense. And then at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, CM Punk won the championship from Bret Hart in a submission match, I do believe. That same night, it should be added, Chris Jericho competed in his first match since losing at WrestleMania and won the Money in the Bank briefcase yet again, 2 years in a row. He is still Mr. Money in the Bank right now. So moving away from that, Bret Hart ended up winning the championship back at the next pay-per-view at SummerSlam. I forget the stipulation on that match. I think it was just a regular one fall, but it was a good one. So then last night in Universe Mode, as we're up to Raw, the first day in October, there was a championship scramble for the belt that CM Punk ended up winning again. So they keep trading back and forth, and they're still technically a tag team. And leading up to Night of Champions, CM Punk and Bret Hart were often congratulating each other after matches well fought. They had Brock Lesnar in a few of their matches over the course of the month, and there were lots of like triple threats and Extreme Rules and crap like that, and they started to show each other respect again. So now CM Punk's the champion, Bret Hart is his number one contender, and the first day after the title changes hands again, they've got a tag team match against the Road Warriors on Raw. I mean, it's crazy how this story's going, and I can easily write a story for it, and I'm going to. This is definitely one I'm going to play with, and it's going to involve, all kinds of cool stuff. So that's the big story on Raw. You've also got, R-Truth and Kofi Kingston hate each other because of their girl troubles, and even though they're still technically a tag team, they more often than not just fight each other, but now Kofi has started helping R-Truth in matches again, so it's getting kind of weird. Kane and The Rock are a tag team that compete a lot, and then you've got the Road Dogg, who just came off a rivalry with Kane. The Road Dogg was the United States champion for quite a long time. He lost it to David Otunga at SummerSlam, and since then he's been involved in a brutal rivalry with Kane, and at Night of Champions, Kane beat the crap out of him in an Inferno match. The other big one we've got going on Raw is on the screen right now. The new Acolytes are the tag team champions. They've been in an extensive feud with the Road Warriors over about the past 3 months since the Acolytes reunited. They've won the belts twice. The Road Warriors, who have been the most dominant tag team in my universe to date, they're looking to win them back, definitely. They just lost to the Acolytes at Night of Champions in a standard tag team match. Water break. So the big story that I might play around with over on SmackDown has to do with my own creator wrestler, the Rausch. When I started the universe, I did not have AWA yet. I just had NXT as the developmental roster because I didn't have that many people downloaded. So I started the Rausch there, and he was among this wave of people that successfully came up using the Internet Championship. He actually beat Stone Cold Steve Austin at SummerSlam Year 1 as the Internet Champion and earned his spot on the SmackDown roster. But he, Zack Ryder, Justin Gabriel, Hunico, they all came up relatively at the same time and kind of took over the SmackDown roster from the bottom up. The Rausch quickly became Intercontinental Champion, as you see there on the screen now. He's been holding that belt for about 80 weeks now. He's the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion, and he's had 3 reigns, tying him with Shawn Michaels for the most ever. He is pretty much the Intercontinental Champion at this point of all time. Somewhere along the way, he got pushed up the card while he was still, pretty good face, and he began feuding with Randy Orton for the World Heavyweight Championship. This is when he turned heel. There was a reaction after a match, and he just went full-on heel. He started interfering in everybody's matches. Eventually, he beat Randy Orton for the belt, but at this time, he had made way too many enemies across the SmackDown roster. Everybody hated him. X-Pac, Sin Cara, Zack Ryder, Hunico, Jinder Mahal, Undertaker, Edge, Shawn Michaels, Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton. That's 10 that I've already counted out of 30 people. They are all his mortal enemies. He has destroyed them countless times, but he was a successful double champion for just about 2 months, and then suddenly, at Night of Champions, he was in a championship scramble match, and Shawn Michaels won the belt. Now, the problem is, the Rausch had gotten rid of the World Heavyweight Championship and replaced it with his brand new Bloodshed title that you see Shawn Michaels has now. It kind of embodied the Rausch in his takeover of SmackDown. He's been endorsed by Shane McMahon as Mr. SmackDown. He is his little pet project. Shawn Michaels just won that belt, and the jury is still out as to whether or not he's going to keep it, whether he's going to come back with the World Heavyweight title, whether Shane McMahon is even going to let the decision stand. That is definitely a story I'm going to be playing with. I've got big ideas for what's happening on SmackDown right now. And then over on NXT, my big story has been following Damian Sandow around. Ever since he got dropped down there, he's been on a tear, and he's been involved in what has essentially been a 2-year-long rivalry with the Great Khali. And they just have hellish matches, cage matches, Extreme Rules, Falls Count Anywhere, countless tables broken. And along the way, Sandow has built his momentum back up. He has put himself in line for the NXT Championship. He actually lost in a title match the night before Night of Champions, but that was only because Jimmy Uso snuck the victory from Drew McIntyre. The match really came down to Drew versus Damian, but Jimmy kind of snuck in there and took it over. I don't think we've seen the last of Damian, and frankly, I want him to get back up onto SmackDown because he was part of Team Rhodes Scholars with Cody, and Cody's up there by himself now, not really doing anything on the low card. I think if Damian comes up with all that momentum, he'll bring them back up. You could see a future heavyweight champion there, maybe a future tag team partner of the Rausch. Who knows? And other than that, on NXT, not too many major storylines to follow. The Internet Championship's been kind of fun to watch recently, and Drew McIntyre is pretty much the biggest a-hole in the world. Stephanie McMahon hates him. He was the NXT champion for most of this year that I've been playing, and actually just lost it to Jimmy Uso there. Epico was the champion for a little while, and he's not anymore. The Usos have been the tag team champions forever, and the women's champion has pretty much always been a Bella, whether it's Nikki or Brie. They don't really tag up ever, so those are those. And then over on AWA, we really don't have too many stories because I literally just started the roster up. Everything that's going on, it's just, the big shakedown of everybody trying to figure out where they stand, and I keep adding people to it. Like, I just added pretty much all of my Chikara guys to it. Actually, right after I finished recording this video, I downloaded Deviant from Chikara, so I have another ant, but I have the colony. I've got Green, Fire, and Soldier ants. They're all a nice big stable. I have the Shield down there raising hell. The Dudley Boys are awesome. I think the biggest story revolves around the AWA Heavyweight Championship that Kevin Steen just lost to Brock Sampson, but the biggest part of that isn't those two guys. It's everybody vying for the #1 contendership. You've got Devon, you've got Bray Wyatt, you've got Alex Riley, and just all these guys keep leapfrogging each other, and I'm kind of worried that Fandango's going to come out of nowhere and steal it, but we shall see. Ooh, there's another burp. I'm sorry, guys. But if you can't tell, my voice is getting a little bit tired. I've pretty much laid out everything about this universe. I've told you how I'm going to play it. You're going to see every match all the time. I've told you how promotions work. You're going to see people go up and down the roster constantly. You know the way the titles work. You know the way the shows are organized, the way pay-per-views are. We are starting in October of year 3. It is October 2014. We will be starting with the first Raw after Night of Champions. We're getting a nice clean slate. And the pay-per-view we're looking forward to this month is Hell in a Cell. I am going to keep it that way because I love Hell in a Cell matches. And, I'll get at least one out of this. We'll see if I don't put some more in there, but, time will tell. Now, yeah. You know how Universe Mode is going to work. I'm excited for this. I hope you guys are too. I've been putting this on for a little while now. I finally have a PVR that works. It's fantastic. Now, I am going to edit this. I am going to get it up for tomorrow, which is Thursday, May 30th. I can't believe it's almost June. And then I'm going to go sleep because I am really tired. You guys, get up, watch this, enjoy it, and hold me to putting some more Universe Mode up there. Y'all take care now, alright? Bye-bye.